all virtually. I am, as Liz mentioned, I am from the Department of Social Services. I work particularly in the Division of Health Services and Community Options. And Community Options manages all of the waiver programs for the state of Connecticut. And we have the administrative authority over all of the waiver programs. And so the waivers allow the state to to sort of waive some of the Medicaid requirements. So people who might normally not be eligible for Medicaid are eligible for Medicaid. Let's see. Oops. Trying to get my, maybe I have trying to get my slides to advance. There we go. So Connecticut's home and community-based services. So it's an umbrella term for long-term healthcare services and supports provided to an individual in their own home and in more integrated community-based settings, as opposed to institutional settings such as nursing homes and psychiatric hospitals. HCBS enable many people with disabilities of all ages to live independently and fully participate in their communities as they choose HCBS. HCBS includes both health and human services to address an individual's medical needs, daily activities, and community integration. State Medicaid programs are the primary funding source for home and community-based services, and the Department of Social Services operates a variety of state Medicaid programs to meet the daily self-care and independent living needs of seniors and people with disabilities. The department is the single state Medicaid agency and therefore maintains administrative authority over all waivers and programs, though several waivers are operated by the Department of Developmental Services and the Department of Mental Health and Addictive Services. With broad federal guidelines, Connecticut's waivers are developed to meet the needs of our members who prefer to receive their long-term care services and supports in their home or community rather than in an institution. All state Medicaid programs have functional and financial eligibility requirements. And I think, we've seen these waiver programs change and develop over the years as, the needs of those that we serve in the state of Connecticut, their needs have changed and what they're looking for has changed. And decades ago, right, the answer was that your grandmother moved into a nursing home, when she got older, or if you, had, a sibling with disabilities and your parents could no longer care for them, they went into an institution. But that's not the case any longer. So these waivers are really changing. The services that are being added to waivers are changing as well. So we renew these waivers every 5 years, but we can make amendments in between and add services as new services are developed, because we're constantly looking at the population that we serve to add additional services to meet those needs, with the overall goal always being to keep individuals at home receiving services and avoiding institutionalization. So currently there's approximately 30,000 members that are being served by waiver and state programs, and they might otherwise be residing in an institutional setting without these supports. I wanted to just quickly review home care versus home health care. We often hear those two terms and we think of them as being interchangeable terms, but they actually are not. So home care is non-medical services, but certainly provided by professional caregivers. They don't require that a doctor orders them. Provide services to assist older adults or individuals with disabilities or those recovering from surgery to remain safe in their home. And often these individuals might otherwise be in an institution without these services. You might also hear these services called personal care, companion care, custodial care, or homemaker services. These services are generally either privately paid for through a Medicaid waiver or long-term care insurance. Then you have home health care, which is medical in nature. It must be ordered by a physician and overseen by a physician. It includes clinical and skilled services, including nursing, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. Also home health aid. It's working towards specific goals, such as regaining independence, maybe healing a wound, or slowing somebody's decline. It's generally time limited based upon the orders of the physician, and there's consistent communication between the home health care team and the physician. And it's covered by Medicare, Medicaid, and most private insurance. Okay, our first waiver program and the largest waiver that we operate is the Connecticut Home Care Program for Elders. This serves individuals 65 years of age and older who are at risk of institutionalization or meet nursing home level of care. They meet functional and financial eligibility criteria. Nursing home level of care means the individual requires assistance with critical needs such as bathing, dressing, eating, toileting, or taking medications. There are 4 categories of service, which are based upon a functional and a financial need, and both have to be met in order to be eligible. Currently, Category 1 is closed to new participants. It has been closed for several years. Category 2 is for individuals with intermediate home care needs who have some assets. There's no income limit, but individuals might have to contribute towards the cost of care if their income is over a certain limit. And assets are at $41,220 for individuals and $54,960 for couples. And this is state funded. So these individuals are not on Medicaid. Category 3 is for individuals with extensive home care needs who would otherwise be in a nursing home and who qualify for Medicaid. So their income limit is $2,250 and their asset limit for an individual is $1,600. So one of the things the waiver does is it raises up that income limit, because community Medicaid, of course, the income limit is pretty low. But on the waiver, we're able to make some concessions, and individuals who might otherwise not be eligible for Medicaid with these waiver programs do become eligible. Let's see. Oh, I think I advanced my slides too quickly. Let's see. Category 5 is for individuals with limited income, limited home care needs who are active on categorically needy Medicaid. Their income limit is 150% of the federal poverty level, approximately $1,611, and the asset limit remains $1,600. So some of the services that you might see on somebody on the home care program receive: adult day health, home care companion, emergency response systems, home delivered meals, mental health counseling is covered, assisted living, personal care attendant, assisted technology, adult family living. We can even do some environmental accessibility adaptations. So if somebody needs a ramp or a modification to their bathroom, as well as some respite and chronic disease management. The next one is Connecticut Home Care Program for Disabled, which actually falls under the umbrella of the Connecticut Home Care Program for Elders. It's actually considered Category 4 of that program. So it's for individuals who are 18 to 64, whose primary diagnosis is a degenerative neurological condition, including but not limited to multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, Huntington's. Financially, these are not recipients of Medicaid or applicants who would not qualify for Medicaid. Any person participating in the pilot program, still called a pilot, though it's been around for several years. They still call the assisted living program a pilot project, and that's been around for 20 years. So I'm not sure when we quite dropped the pilot part. Whose income exceeds 200% of the federal poverty level, which changes each year, shall contribute to the cost of care. And they can have some assets as well. Functionally, they must meet nursing facility level of care, which is defined as supervision of or queuing with 3 of their ADLs plus a need factor, hands-on care with more than 3 ADLs, hands-on care for more than 2 ADLs plus a need factor. Need factors do include behavioral need, daily supervision to prevent harm, cognitive impairment, which requires daily supervision, or medication support. So they require assistance for administration of physician-ordered daily medications beyond setup. Some of similar services to the home care program for elders, homemaker, visiting nurse, home health, OT and PT, home delivered meals, adult day health, assisted living services, transportation. This program is limited to 100 slots. Okay. Next one, I'll just briefly gloss over because it is for children under the age of 21. It is the Katy Beckett waiver. And what it does is it allows parents, the parents' income is not counted so that they may become eligible, so that medically needy children with physical disabilities who might have developmental disabilities can qualify for Medicaid and receive highly skilled home health care services. And the waiver basically just provides the case management services, and they're receiving their home health care services through Medicaid directly. There is a waiting list for that program. Personal care attendant waiver serves individuals 18 to 64 who have a significant need for hands-on assistance with at least 2 activities of daily living: eating, bathing, dressing, transferring, or toileting. They functional eligibility, they must require assistance with at least 2 of those ADLs. Financially, they must be at or below 300% of the maximum SSI benefit. There's an asset limit of $1,600. Those services are agency-based personal care attendant, adult day health, home delivered meals, adult family living, and mental health counseling. It is required once they turn 65 that they do transition to the Connecticut Home Care Program for Elders, because this waiver does have limited slots, and there is a waiting list for it. So we want individuals once they turn 65 to move over and open up a slot for other folks.
Jennifer, folks are asking approximately how long are the waiting lists for these waivers?
It depends on the waiver. Some of them are not very long. So the Connecticut Home Care Program for the Disabled is pretty short, just a few months. The PCA waiver is probably a year or 2 long. And those like the ABI waiver are probably closer, I think, to 3 or 4 years long. But there are, with the community first choice, which I will talk about, so there are, you can be on a waiting list and still access other services while you're waiting for your slot to come up on the waiver. Acquired brain injury waiver, there are 2. One is currently has been closed because they created the ABI waiver 2 that added some additional services. It is for those 18 to 64, same concept that once they turn 65, they would transition to the Connecticut Home Care Program for Elders. It's a brain injury that's not a result of a developmental disability or a degenerative condition, and dysfunction is not primarily the result of a mental illness. Medicaid income limit less than 200% of the federal poverty level, and asset limit of $1,600. A lot of the similar services as the previous waivers, but does include things like pre-vocational services, supported employment, ABI group day, cognitive behavioral programs, and community living support services. And there is a waiting list for that program as well. Autism waiver has quite a lengthy waiting list. Does serve persons with autism who do not have an intellectual disability. Required to have substantial limitations in at least 2 of the following: self-care, understanding and use of language, learning, mobility, self-direction, or capacity for independent living. The functional impairment must have been diagnosed before age 22 and be expected to continue indefinitely. And the individual should be Medicaid eligible, Husky AC or D. Services include a live-in companion, assistive technology, clinical behavioral support services, job coaching, life skills coach, social skills group, specialized driving assessment. And then the Department of Developmental Services, they operate 3 separate waivers. So as I mentioned, the Department of Social Services, as the state Medicaid agency, we have administrative oversight over the Medicaid waivers. But then the Department of Developmental Services, they operate 3 waivers. They have a comprehensive waiver, which is for individuals over the age of 3, intellectual disability, needing an ICF or ID level of care, income less than 300% of SSI and assets less than 1,600. Provides a variety of services, including a community companion, a live-in caregiver, supported employment, adult companion, assisted living, behavioral support, a variety of services to help somebody, be independent and reside in the community and avoid institutionalization. The individual and family supports waiver, for individuals who live in their own home or family home who need less extensive supports than those on the comprehensive waiver. Again, for those over the age of 3 and at that ICFID level of care, same financial eligibility and very similar services to the previous waiver. And the last DDS waiver is the employment and supports waiver. This is really to help young adults transitioning from school to work who had intellectual disabilities age 3 or older, and persons with developmental disabilities age 18 and over, provided to individuals living in their own home or their family home. Same functional eligibility and financial eligibility, focused on community-based day support options, supported employment, independent support broker, some behavioral support. There's some individual goods and services, also individual day support interpreter, and specialized medical equipment, as well as transportation. Then DDS, for their 3 waivers, do not necessarily have a waiting list for the waivers. They might have a waiting list for particular services within the waiver. And then the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, they operate 1 waiver. That's the mental health waiver, which serves persons 22 years and older who have serious mental illness. So they live in an institutional setting or meeting the level of care requirement for nursing home care and express an interest in transitioning into the community. They need to be eligible for Medicaid. Services include adult day health, community support, supported employment, brief episode stabilization, chore, transportation, recovery assistant, peer supports, really a good array of services to really, surround that person with supportive services to help them remain successful in the community. State plan service, so there is Community First Choice. It's a new program in Connecticut offering active Medicaid members as part of the Affordable Care Act. It allows individuals to receive supports and services in their home by accessing personal care attendants and other supports through self-direction. You have to have Medicaid, and you have to be somebody who's able to manage your own services and meets institutional level of care. So you likely would be in an institution such as a nursing home if you did not have these services. And self-direction is when you or someone you appoint makes the decisions regarding your care and services. You have control over what services you want in your home, and you have the responsibility of managing those services. Self-direction promotes personal choice and control during a person-centered planning process. If you have a conservator or someone acting with power of attorney, they can also help you self-direct your services. And if you enroll in Community First Choice, you'd be able to hire from a pool of qualified staff. So you're not using agency staff. These individuals do not work for an agency. You actually, the person is the employer for that staff person. You can hire also certain family members and friends, and you will set the hiring requirements for each of your staff. And these individuals can provide things like help with meals, household chores, assistance with all of your activities of daily living. And there's also educational services available to help you increase your independence and learn how to manage your in-home staff. Just in terms of, Husky Health, we're going quick through the slides here. Let's see. I did make a slide just to list out, what does Husky Health provide? What are the basic benefits under that? So that's, you have access to the slides, so you certainly can, take a peek at that. But that is where you could access home health care through through a physician. So a physician ordering if somebody needed physical therapy or occupational therapy, skilled nursing visits, you could access that, through the Husky Health. And then what are some common barriers, that we see to individuals either accessing or, wanting to become, going on the waiver? It's difficulty navigating the application process, which can be lengthy and time consuming. So particularly for somebody who does not have active Medicaid, it's even longer. A little bit easier if the financial piece has already taken place because they're on Medicaid. But I think part of it is understanding that, as I mentioned in the beginning, that it's not a quick process. I think, we sometimes have individuals that, that call in to make a referral and, they're disappointed to find out that, services may not start for, 1 or 2 months because the process is, let's say for the Connecticut Home Care Program, somebody calls into the community options unit, a nurse speaks to the person, they take the referral. They call the person that needs the services. They're going to ask them questions, a basic screening to see do they meet the basic requirements for the program. And then that person gets referred to one of the access agencies, which is like Southwestern Connecticut Agency on Aging or Connecticut Community Care. That's who we contract with to do the assessments. So a care manager goes out and completes an assessment. So the process it's not an overnight. So if somebody thinks, they're going to receive services, tomorrow, that can be, disappointing. So I think it's always important to, manage expectations and, understand that, it's definitely worth the wait. But that it's going to take some time. And I think it's always helpful then that, partnering with those that are in need of services so that, they have somebody to help them, work through, the documents and the requirements. And, so that sort of ties into the inability to follow through with requests for documentation, particularly for somebody that needs to apply for Medicaid or even the state funded portion of the Connecticut Home Care Program. There are some documentation requirements and that, that could easily get overwhelming. They might feel uncomfortable sharing personal health information and participating in the assessment process. So the assessment process can be lengthy. There are a lot of personal questions. So particularly, might have, concerns, this is somebody they don't know, they don't have a relationship with, and, we're going to ask very personal questions about, your activities of daily living and your support network. So I think, also, preparing the person for what that assessment process looks like, that's going to help it to be a much more successful outcome. Maintaining eligibility for services requires completion of redeterminations, requests for additional information. So that is also another barrier, is that individuals often don't realize who are on the waiver and who are receiving services through a waiver. They don't realize that their waiver services are connected to their Medicaid. So if for some chance they don't complete the redetermination or their Medicaid becomes ineligible, they do lose their home and community-based services. The two are tied hand in hand. So it's important to follow through on those redeterminations, or, if there's a request for additional information, so we keep everything intact. Lack of support, not having somebody to walk you through the process and, help you adjust. If you're not somebody that's had in-home services before, that can be overwhelming. A stranger coming into your home, knowing what to expect, knowing what the roles are of in each person who is going to be involved in your care plan. That I think also helps for it to be a much more successful service. Distrust in public service programs. Many people have, don't trust the state. So if the state's involved, they don't want to be involved. So I think, again, sort of talking that through. And transportation challenges, sometimes just challenges being able to get, if you need to pick up a bank statement or you need to get to the doctor, just being able to have access to where you need to get. And let's see, just a few more. Evaluations for eligibility, just a couple of things. Medicaid waivers are not entitlement programs. So as I mentioned, some of these programs have limited enrollment. So you might be working with somebody who meets the eligibility requirements, but they're not guaranteed assistance and they may be put on a wait list. And so I think that's also important, again, in terms of expectation management. Each waiver has its own referral and screening process. Particularly, DDS has their own process, DMS has their own process. Once a referral and screening is completed, depending on the program, an assessment will be completed, including a determination of financial eligibility. And then the last slide, I listed how to make a referral for each of the programs that I mentioned. And then I included a link which will also direct you to more information on the waivers. And some of those waivers also have online referrals that you can make as well. And that's the end. Any questions?
Can you send those slides to us? It'd be good for reference.
Absolutely. Yes. So they are, they're in the chat box. I will also send an email out, and then they are currently posted on our website.
Awesome.
And then we will also post the recording of this meeting on the website.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. If folks have questions, they're welcome to put them in the chat box, or if you want to unmute yourself, you're welcome to ask a question.
I think you pretty much covered all, including the barriers. Write down the list, all the barriers you mentioned. That's what we encounter with our clients. A lot of mental health, paperwork, the process, how long it takes. And sometimes it's just navigating through these websites and stuff.
Yes, it's so true. And I think that's, I definitely agree. And hopefully, being able to really be upfront and sort of set the expectations as this is what we can expect, hopefully helps.
Great.
It's important.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Andrea.
It's important what Jennifer said about this is not an entitlement, it's a benefit, right? So not everybody is going to get it right away. People may be on the wait list. So this isn't a crisis program, right? So a lot of times what you're going to have to do is help people through the process, but also try to fill in the gaps, right? How can we get them help now? And then how can we help them apply for something long-term? And that this is for people, think about it. So, okay, so you guys, right? When somebody needs a lot of help, it oftentimes happens gradually. And then I finally realize as a case manager, oh my God, I can't be in their apartment 3 times a day. They really need more extensive help, right? What I think Jennifer is saying, and you should correct me if I'm wrong, Jennifer, is that people should apply in the beginning of that process, not when you realize that, and it happens, right? Not that when you realize that this isn't a service you can't provide. So that you don't want to do it at the end of the process. You want to do it as early as possible. Does that make sense, y'all? And that also means that you're going to have to help people through this process, though there's a lot of help available from those call lines, and they will help people put those together. But in order to manage that, you're going to have to help people as well as help them with the sorts of things that they really need the long-term help for.
Right.
I see in the chat box, we have a question. Do you have a written definition of institutional setting for the DMS waiver?
Sure, I can get that for you.
Great. Anything else? Folks are welcome again. Put a note in the chat box or unmute yourselves. Okay, well, if folks have questions, we're going to keep going, but if folks think of stuff as we're moving on to our next section, you're welcome again, put them in the chat box or raise your hand, unmute yourself. And also if you have that 2 a.m. question, feel free to shoot me a note. I might not read it at 2 a.m., but we can certainly get answers for you. Ask Jennifer. So I know it's a lot to process, but we really want to use our great resource in Jennifer. And so we'll stay in touch and get answers and figure it out for you.
Great,
so I don't know, Jennifer, if you saw this, but Emily was saying that she applied to CFC online and it was great. It was a great process.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. That's great feedback.
Yeah.
You guys got back to the client pretty fast, directly to the client. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Oh, you're most welcome. So glad to hear that. That's what we wanted.
You know, Emily, that's a good question. So if you were worried about the clients being able to manage this process, can you tell the worker that if you're a family member or if you're a case manager, that they can also connect with you if they can't connect with the client or the client isn't getting back to them? Is that something you can do with the client's permission?
Well, typically I'm the case manager. So typically like what I do with my clients is like I interview them or I'm here in the same building that they live in. So I kind of see what they go through and I just apply them. I talk to them first and I apply them, and then the agency calls them directly and further assesses them and then kind of like processes the application process. Yeah. So it's pretty neat.
So that's great. But Emily, what if somebody, or Jennifer, what if you're worried about somebody being able to handle the process? Can you put your name in there so they contact you instead of, if they can't get a hold of the client, will they contact the case manager?
I've noticed that they can.
Right. You could list yourself. The client has to agree to it, of course, but right.
Yeah.
You could be listed as somebody that you can, and you should do that always, is list yourself as somebody
Good.
that we can share information with. Or the agency who's doing the assessment can share information with, so that if there's difficulty in, reaching the client, or if more information is needed, that they're going to be able to communicate with you and you're not going to, be stuck. Highly recommend making sure that when you're putting in an application that you include yourself.
Yeah, because a lot of us had clients who don't open a lick of mail and don't answer their phone. So then we want them to be able to contact somebody else.
Yes, definitely. Right. Because then what happens is it gets closed out, the referral gets closed out, and start all over again. So yes, definitely include yourself.
So that's an important thing to remember, y'all. Okay, so we wanted to give you guys a chance to practice, and we've got some scenarios and you should add things. I didn't put income in any of them, so you're going to have to figure out like different incomes, right? You can add these these are very simple scenarios, and want you to take a look at where you think you're going to apply them. So one is an elderly person who needs more help in the home. One is somebody with medical needs. Fall risk, needs help bathing, but also they're younger and it was the result of an accident. The other one is a family with a disabled child. So that's an important thing. Some of you all work with families, and if you have a disabled child, that can really interfere with anything the parent is going to do. So that oftentimes the structure, particularly, Jennifer, there's a system called rapid rehousing, where people have about 6 months to a year to increase their income to the point where they can maintain their own housing, or they can apply for a subsidy. That's something else that people are going to do. Though the real point of rapid rehousing is to get a job. And oftentimes people with disabled children, it's so time intensive that they're unable to do that. And, daycare and that sort of thing is not usually open to them. So this might be a possibility. And then we have a person with a mental illness who can't manage daily tasks. So looking at the time, I'm going to divide you guys up in groups. I'm going to start to put these, there's some questions to talk about. You have, there's a link to the slides, so you can download them for reference for this. And I am going to start to put this in the slides. So let me get these up, Liz, before. So we're going to do 2 series of questions. Okay. So here are the questions. They're going into the chat. The reason we put them in the chat, yes, I realize this is probably not the most efficient thing, and we're going to go through them as well. I can get them in the chat, Liz. And I'm going to go through these, and then we are going to break up in groups. So we're just going to do the first 2. Okay. You all have questions. In the meantime, now would be a good time. I'm just going to talk to you a minute about the breakout sessions. You have to affirmatively select a breakout, which means it'll pop up. It'll tell you what group it is. You have to select it. It's not automatic. And the next thing is that when you're in the breakouts in particular, if you could turn on your cameras, that would be a huge help because people want to see each other. Okay, let's see what I got here. Okay, so we've got Mary in there. We've got John. Okay, can you all see those in the chat? If you look at them in the chat now, you can see them in your breakout groups. Okay. So what we're going to ask you to do is choose one of those cases. And remember, the first one is an elderly person. The second one is a person that actually had an accident and has some real medical needs. And you want to think about the various home care options, which is a large part of this, but you also want to think about home health care, which is the best one, and decide which one the person may be eligible for and best meets their needs, so you know which number to call. So you want to ask, what else do you need to know? And as I mentioned, income is a big one, right? How will you talk to your client about their options and what their needs are? You need to talk to clients and prepare them for this process, and then make a plan to establish eligibility and apply for the service. Okay, so a lot of the work in applying for the service is done by them, but some of the work is done by you all. Okay, so let's go to the next one, Liz. Next slide. People see these in the chat, just nod, put your fingers up, whatever. Yeah, you see them. Okay. So Mary has been living in housing for 5 years. She needs a great deal of help. She often asks you to arrange transportation, and you got her Meals on Wheels. Is this sounding familiar? This is the slow drip one, right? Her apartment has never been perfect, but now it's dirty. She has a hard time with cleaning tasks. She's increasingly forgetful. She forgets her medication. She forgets to eat, and she's been missing appointments. You talk to her medical provider about your concerns, if she might be a benefit from an OT. And she said the medical provider said, this is just age. So one of the things is when they get OT services, the physician has to recommend it, right? But it's supposed to be for people who are getting better. The remedial care is through the home care. This is not a crisis. You're worried about how case managers can pick up the slack here. You worry she may need something else. This is causing her some distress. She's worried about them taking her whole SSI check. So this one, you have what she's on. So think about this one, about what she's going to do. Okay, so let's go to the next one. So John was hit by a car and his leg was broken. He's been in the hospital and doing pretty well in physical therapy. That's important, that he was making some improvements. He returned to housing and stopped going to PT, which is physical therapy. He refused to use his crutches and scoots around the house in a desk chair. This actually happened. You're familiar with that sort of thing? No crutches, I'm just going to scoot around in usually your desk chair. He hasn't bathed in some time and he refuses to talk about it. You've not seen him on 2 feet in weeks. He asks the case managers constantly for food, usually part of your lunch, and asking you to order him pizza. He's furious you're not helping him more. The suggestion of Meals on Wheels he found disgusting, which is not that all uncommon. The other tenants are now beginning to feed him. They're asking why you don't help him. His attitude is not pleasant, as you can well imagine, but he clearly needs help. He also does not see things getting any better. So you've got the questions. We're going to divide you up in groups. Liz is going to launch the breakouts, right? And if you could turn on your camera in the breakouts. So we'll pop into the breakouts to see if you have questions, but if you have questions, you can also return to the main room. Okay? Okay.
Okay, this is my group or what?
Have you launched it, Liz? There it is.
Join.
Okay, for the first couple of minutes, we're going to watch and make sure that everybody's assigned to a group. Okay. It's okay. That's fine. You can use, if you're using your phone and you can't get a camera, that's okay. Just try. Liz, I should have said this, we're gonna give them 10 minutes, so I'm gonna start the timer here.
I just let
Oh,
them know.
great, okay. So we've still got some people who can't get into the rooms. So if you guys are having problems, you can either talk or you can put it in the chat. Okay. So Jean-Paul, Daisy, Mario, Zoom user, Glide, and Kalisha. Okay. Here we go.
All right.
Yeah. Sometimes people just had to step away from their desk. All right, so I'm gonna pop in. Now I'm gonna give them a minute to choose a case. And then I'll pop in. All right, let me just check the breakouts. Everybody is assigned, okay. All right, let's see what's going on.
Hi, Liz. I was in group 6.
Hey there, we're going to give everybody about 30 seconds to come back.
Yeah, welcome back. Liz, we're on till 11:30, right? Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, people should be, yep. So tell me what came up. I was in group 2 for a while and a lot of things came up.
It's quite interesting.
So what came up for you guys? What were the questions that it raised? I saw people going through the PowerPoint trying to figure out like what people were eligible for. That's great. Tell you what, why don't we do it by the ones that you did? I know a lot of people did Mary. You want to go back to Mary, Liz? So who had a conversation about Mary and what came up?
Hi, this is Daisy. I was in I believe group 3.
Yep.
We actually talked about both, and for Mary, we were saying that she's a person who will benefit for the home health care services. Then we were discussing, like, she's an individual who has a SSI check, so we believe that she will qualify for CHCPE. Only what made her eligible, even though she didn't have the issues with bathing, toileting, we thought that just by her taking her medication, she may qualify. And she's the age of 65. So the one under that one, she wasn't eligible because she wasn't 64. Then for John, we was basically looking at he may have a mental health issue. I wouldn't say issue, I'm sorry. So we was just by hearing, his eating became an issue. It was more so like we was concerned about his mental health. So we said he was one who qualified for, I believe it was home care. Because I'm sorry, Mary was home care, and I think John was home health care because we was focused on specific goals with him.
Yep.
I believe
good.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna leave it there.
Good.
I'm not volunteering no more.
Daisy, you did great.
You did great.
Thank you.
Mary Stapp asked for an OT evaluation, not neurological. Maybe some brain degeneration need evaluation. That's a really good point. And I want to actually pick up on what Sylvia said, is that an enormous amount of, the theory is that an enormous amount of people have closed head injuries, especially if they've lived outside. So a neurological is always a good idea. So you want to find out, yes, exactly, if Mary is progressive. The other thing is that people don't often ask for help with bathing, stuff like that. That's what Jennifer was talking about, really personal. So getting people to describe it, she may have more needs than she's originally presenting to you, but she forgets to eat. That's a problem. And she forgets her medication. So John is going to home health, is what you're saying. But that's a great thing. And you may realize that as the home health progresses, that he needs more help. And I like the fact about you were going to check out the mental illness. Okay. Anybody else have comments about these? Group 2 actually brought in their own cases. You want to talk about that, you guys?
I very selfishly did that because I'm just going through it with my mother-in-law right now. So I thought I would sneak it in.
Go ahead.
It's a kind of a similar situation. She is living in senior housing. And she's gradually, at the age of 79, she is gradually needing more and more care and is plateauing in terms of getting better. So I'm noticing with Mary, it says she's increasingly forgetful. In a Mary situation, I would probably get her evaluated for Alzheimer's or dementia and see if there's eligibility for care that way. We did that with my mother, and ended up getting a tremendous amount of care. In the situation that we talked about, she needs somebody to come in and help with ADL. So we're going to get the home health care and then apply, if I'm not mistaken. If that was the correct order?
What you said, and that sounds right. So Jennifer, people are thinking about getting home health care because that's an easy referral, particularly if they're on Medicare, but at the same time, apply for the longer term services, because Christy's consideration was that the home health care was saying she's not getting better, so they can't continue services.
Correct. Absolutely. And there has to be, for home health care, right, there has to be a skilled need. There has to be something that you're working on. Medicare isn't going to pay for that custodial care.
Right.
So
but they can apply for the longer term care at the same time they're getting home health care. That was the question. Great.
Absolutely.
Other people had comments? Is this coming up for you guys?
I work in PSH and I have 3 clients who I've connected with CFC and the Elders program. And a problem we talked about in group 7 was more regarding John, that like, I know like the clients I've had, they've had sometimes substance use, and it's been very hard, even when they're connected to the program, to find people who are willing to work with them.
Yes. That is very difficult because some home care agencies or even home health care agencies won't come in if the person's intoxicated.
Yeah, we
Right.
also, right. So I'm with my clients, I've gotten them connected through Allied and just picking their own providers.
Yeah.
But it's been really tough with them. Also with John, we were wondering what other services he may have. You know, he has the case management, but does he have food stamps? Does he have income? We talked about getting him connected with like a food bank. And food stamps if he doesn't have cash assistance or SSI for income.
Yeah. I try to write this one where John's attitude is, where's my damn case manager? You familiar with that attitude?
Very familiar, yes.
But that's right. He has other things. The other thing is this does not all have to be out of the homeless system. So it's encouraging people to use resources out of the homeless system. And sometimes as we do that, and it's not an easy fix, right? So there's all these communications and stuff that are set up within the homeless system, but we've got to start to do this. And that's what this is about. And I think that talking to some home care agencies, I also think that we need to talk to people who have substance abuse problems about, you know, I'm not talking about sobriety, but abstinence while the worker is there. And you can usually work that out, right? Because people know that if they can't get this assistance, they may not be able to stay in their housing. So we don't want to threaten them, but we want to talk to them about how we put together a network of services and what he's got to do in order to access those services, which is much like what Jennifer was talking about. When we explain to people what the process is, we should also explain to people what are the expectations of the home care.
You know, for us, these happen constantly. However, our biggest issue is complete refusal of services.
Okay, let's talk about that for a minute.
Now here's where the issue is for me, because we have had elderly people who are going to die if they don't take services.
Yeah.
And there's a thing called free will in human rights where they can choose. Look, and I'm a monster advocate, okay? I just have to put that out there. All right. And I can talk anything I have to talk to anyone, right, Liz? And so I feel my next step oftentimes is elderly protective services, which for me these days feels like a joke, because I can get someone to go out and they're going to tell me that person is competent. Okay, so I am watching a slow suicide with my hands tied behind my back. And this happens. And I have staff who are so upset with what we can't do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is not an uncommon thing. And you're right. That sort of slow decline where people are refusing to do everything, right? One of the things—
I wish I had John.
John was not easy. He was actually based on one of my clients, and man, he drove me nuts.
Oh, I'm sure, because he's a big, awful, mean brat.
But you know what? I think that the slow decline is very hard for people. And Jennifer said it, one of the barriers is not wanting people in their houses.
Yeah.
So sometimes what we do is we make a plan, right? And we also tell people that, you know, there's going to be a point where we call the ambulance. There's going to be a point where we call, right? And that we have to. So I'll give you an example, right? How about a guy who's drinking and his belly is so distended and he's in such advanced alcoholism, right? That you're afraid he's going to die.
Well, I've called the hospital and the hospital has released him because he is competent.
Okay.
And he's dead now.
Okay. Okay.
So I had that guy.
All right. All of us
With
have
an
had
open
this.
wound.
All
With
of
an
us have
open
had this
wound.
guy.
Yeah.
All of us have had this
Yeah.
guy, right? We need to hold the hospital responsible. We need to get them to refer, right? We need to
Yep.
get them to refer to this, right?
They
The
discharge
other
on
thing-
Saturday night.
Okay, that's awful. It's
No, it
awful.
happens all the time with Yale. Oh, sorry, Yale, if you're on here. Just
Okay.
constant.
All right. Sylvia, I think that convincing people to take services is a lot of what we do. And the truth is we're not always going to succeed. And we want to make people as comfortable as possible. Most of these home care agencies and certainly home health aides have hospice care. And sometimes we have to talk about that, right? And hospice care is a little more open to the person still drinking, that sort of stuff. Look, as long as the home care attendant is not drinking with them, I'm happy with that, right? So that, and that rarely happens, right? But I think that one of the things that we need to do is look at all the options. And I think that this is what it is. And you know what? People will refuse. And sometimes they don't meet that criteria for, adult protective services. That's the sort of thing, right? There are other things that we can do. Are they competent to handle their money? Is that an issue? Can we do that? Can we work when we look at different things so that we can get some help in the house, right? Sometimes we've actually worked with people like that and got them to pay for heavy duty cleaners just because we're not going to let people live in a disgusting environment, right? I mean, I think that there are options. We do have people who are long-term refusers, right? We also have to realize that we need to tell people that supportive housing only goes so far and we can't offer these services, right?
See, I think that's what John has to understand. John has to see the job description of his case manager. And he's not going to like it. He's going to be madder.
No, he's not going to like it. And it may not, right? But we need to talk about how can he remain here and keep working with his case manager, which is clearly like, okay, you know what, John? After your homemaker comes in, we'll have lunch together and you can have half my sandwich, right? Sometimes it's as simple as that. So we've got to be able to negotiate with people around this stuff. And you're right, it's not always going to work. And it's really hard for staff. It's hard for the other people in the house and the other people that know him. But we're going to keep offering options because that's what people deserve, right? And this is about having the options to offer people. It's not always going to work. You're right. It's not always going to work. I also think discharging on a Saturday night with somebody who's got some real issues like that is not acceptable. And I would
I've gone back. I'm advocating right back to the patient folks and to the doctor. And it's just, I've even said up front to them, don't even dream. Like by this time, it's not niceness anymore for me. Don't even dream of discharging them this weekend, and you must talk to us first. You have to. We will not accept the person in the building.
Put it in writing.
Yep. Okay, next step. Thank you.
But put it in writing. But the other thing is you can't refuse somebody to come back to their own home.
I know.
Right? So we need to be careful about not threatening something we can't follow up on. But, be very clear what you're worried about, what the risks are, and make a clear, the discharge has to be planned and they have to, right? And that just put it in writing.
Yeah.
It's tough. I know you guys are in tough situations. Anything else coming up with this?
I just want to say I have a client who is a severe alcoholic with a very distended stomach that has to get drained weekly. And he's been given about 2 years to live and has decided to, drink himself to death. His apartment was horrifyingly disgusting. What our agency did was got together with members of the community who were willing to help. We paid them a small amount, and they all got together, helped him get his apartment cleaned up so that we could get home care services in. And he was just approved through CFC for 35 hours a week of home care.
That's great.
So you're just trying to make him as comfortable as possible because he has made the decision that he's not going to get sober, and he is going to deteriorate over time. At some point, we'll look at hospice, but for now, just we were able to connect him with those services to just try and keep him at home and comfortable for as long as we could.
Yep. And that's sometimes the reality, right? And that I really like the fact that you have hospice in your back pocket. So it sounds like you know what the rules are of hospice. And that's a really worthwhile thing to do. You know what, Molly? I would suggest sometimes that people are often in a lot of pain. So the thought of giving up alcohol is really foreign to them. You might want to ask the somebody to do a palliative care assessment. So they might be able to relieve some of the pain, which might take some of the pressure off the alcohol. The other thing is just having,
Well, I'd also just like to say at one point he was willing to go to treatment and we got him into a detox, and no treatment program, no 30-day program in the state of Connecticut would take him. They said that because of his medical condition, they couldn't take him, and they sent him right back to the street. And now he's like, well, what's the point? I'm not going to bother. So there's been those barriers as well, where like this is someone who's totally ambulatory, who needs no accommodation besides going to the hospital once or twice in a 30-day period to get his stomach drained. And the programs have been refusing to accept him. I mean, I called everyone in the state. I got a letter from his doctor saying he was medically cleared, and they all refused him. And he's like, well, now I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to keep drinking. So
yeah, it makes people really nervous. What I'm saying is sometimes it has to do with pain. And sometimes people, I don't think he's going to stop drinking, especially if he knows he's going to die. But you know what? He might be able to reduce the times they have to drain his stomach if that's a pain for him. And if he gets some relief from the pain, sometimes that helps. A lot of times people, with those advanced alcohol, it's painful, right? It's painful. So that, and a palliative care nurse might be able to help you there.
Okay, thank you.
New York has plenty of programs that would take him without insurance.
New York?
New York does? I just read the chat. I wasn't saying that. I don't know. I'm in New York. I don't know of any programs like that. Oh, you mean alcohol programs? Yeah. Detox programs? Absolutely. They would take him without insurance. It's not an insurance issue. But most detoxes, most hospital-based detoxes won't take people if they have severe medical needs, though you got a medical clearance for detox. So you could probably push that, but it sounds like that might not be the way to go, but you could also engage him in the advocating for himself part, right? Sometimes I say to people, do I know this is not appropriate? Yes, I do. But I say to them, come on. You and I are going to take on that damn detox, right? See if they can, right? Sometimes people engage in that sort of struggle and that to advocate for themselves, and that might work, but it's a long shot. So it doesn't sound like he's really interested in detox, right? He probably sees no need for detox, but you also want to look at what the alcohol is doing for him. He knows it's killing him and he doesn't really care, but maybe it's relieving pain or something like that. And if we can address those issues and get some palliative care nursing, I am a huge fan of. It made a huge difference for us. It was so effective in our programs. We actually put a palliative care nurse on staff, and she helped us with these things. So palliative care can really be helpful. I'm not suggesting you put them on staff because it's expensive. And the building we had 652 people in it. So we had a lot of economies of scale, so we could afford to do that. But there are a lot of places that will offer you palliative care, even some of the home health care agencies. Isn't that right, Jennifer? Some of the home health care agencies and hospice agencies will offer palliative care, and just getting somebody to do an evaluation might help him.
It's always good to know what all your options are.
Yep, that's what this is about. Okay. Let me look at the time. All right. So do people have other questions? I'm reluctant to give you the other ones, but you know what I think I want to do is let's go through the family one. Anybody here from Rapid Rehousing? Yeah, okay. So let's talk about this one and just throw out ideas. So Rose is in Rapid Rehousing. She has a young son named Gabe. Gabe has some intellectual disabilities and some mobility issues. He's been seen by several medical providers, but Rosa is really his caretaker. Rosa is clear she needs a break. She loves him and she wants him to have a good life, but wonders how long she can do this. She's often called to the school because of behavior problems. She works closely with the school in establishing behavioral plans, but it is still being called constantly. She needs to do everything for him: bathing, feeding, transporting. She knows this is progressive and will get worse. He will also get bigger and making care more difficult, which is an issue with children, right? It's one thing to lift a 3-year-old. It's another thing to lift a 14-year-old. She also knows his income, he has SSI, will not support them in housing. So she's under some pressure, right? She can't hold a job with all the call outs, and she asks for your help. She probably has been refused in daycare too because of his problems. And she asks for your help in getting him into a home, right? She doesn't want to do it, but now feels like it's her only choice. So she's feeling like she'll have to institutionalize her son if she can't get some help. So what's available, y'all?
If he has an intellectual disability, he can go for the DSS services, which tend to be a little more encompassing. If it's more of ASD, he would have to go towards the ASD program. But unfortunately, my daughter currently is on it and has been on it for 4 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, for at least the ASD programs, I have seen absolutely no movement. And I know there's like at least 3,000 kids on it.
Okay. So she can apply for these services, right? ASD services. Okay, Jennifer, I'm not quite conversant in the family one and the children one. Is that ASD is the child one?
ASD is the autism spectrum disorder.
Autism spectrum.
Right, that's the one. The waiver is many years long. They did just add 50 slots last year, and they're looking to add some more slots this year, but there's tremendous need for those impacted by autism in the state of Connecticut.
How about the child services that you mentioned?
Rosa would be a great candidate for the Katy Beckett waiver. But again, the wait list is, my son received services through the Katy Beckett waiver. We applied when he was, I believe, probably 3. It took 4.5 years for us to get onto the waiver.
Okay, this waiting list is fast.
It's fast. No, it's not fast.
It's bad. It's not fast. Sorry.
Yep. The other issue I see is in the first sentence says Rosa is in RRH, which is a very short term. When we're talking about, 5-year wait list for Rapid Rehousing is a very short term program. We'd probably look at getting her a voucher, getting her set up with some permanent housing, and applying for the Katy Beckett waiver would be the way I think we'd have to go.
Okay. How about the DD services? How about the DD waiver for developmental disabilities? This guy has some intellectual disabilities.
And I know, well, with that, they're really, really stringent on a lot of things. So he would have to do a lot of testing too, for the school would probably do it. But when it comes to children and trying to get them services, IQ tests are involved, functional tests, stuff like that to see what they qualify for. And unfortunately, there's a lot of very long waiting lists for the children that need help at this point. So it's difficult for the families who are struggling with maybe a kid that's like right on the border of services, so they can't get that.
Okay. So let's say his IQ was below 70. Do you think there might be some respite services available through developmental disabilities?
There possibly is, but how old is he? Because they don't start until a certain age too, some of them.
Okay.
Like child respite is not as common especially young children. So, and a lot of respites I know kind of aren't, there have been issues with it, like just getting them up in slots and availability. So.
Okay. So the recommendation is.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When it comes to the parent, the guardian, just suggesting, wouldn't the employment and day supportive waiver be something that can assist her?
Say it again.
The employment and day supports waiver, wouldn't that be something that can assist her?
Interesting question. You mean for youth?
Yes, well, because she said she was having issues with employment. So I was just reading it, and it says service young adults transitioning from school to work. So wouldn't that, well, no, I didn't read into
these
that.
Services are for the youth, but I'm not sure that, I mean, she would certainly benefit from some employment services, but the barriers are very real for her. And I think what David said is he would try to get her a subsidy so she wasn't under so much pressure, right? Because rapid rehousing is short term and this is a long-term goal, and try to get her on the waiver.
Okay.
Maybe also check out the developmental disabilities possibility for respite to give her a little break, right?
Right.
But you want to apply her as quickly as possible, it sounds like, for these waivers. Yep. W. Brady, tell me your name.
Yes. Yeah, Will Brady.
Will.
I work at the Columbus Housewarming Center in Middletown.
Yeah.
I have questions about two clients that one has been through and he's left and gone to another, but it was clear that it was his knowledge that he was at some time a DDS client when it was DMR and had received services as a child and into adulthood. He was not receiving services from them. He was living in a home and caring for an older gentleman. When the older gentleman died, he had no place to go. We ended up with him, and I was unaware of how to get him reconnected to DDS. We're a short-term facility, so
yes,
we wouldn't have been able to necessarily do it in the time that we had, but I'm going to come across that again in the future, perhaps. So how do we address that? How might we get him reconnected to DDS services?
So there's several pieces of good news in what you said. One is he was connected before, so he's already established eligibility. And some DDS services, you have to establish eligibility before they're 18, right?
Right.
So he's already established eligibility. And I think it might be useful that if this is coming up for people, that we get somebody from DDS to come in and talk about the process. And we're happy to do that. I think you're right. Just like anything else, Will, this is going to take some time. Right. So even if you're a short-term program, but even if you start the process and make sure that the next person that picks up with this person can continue the process, that'd be really helpful. So let's see if we can get some people from DDS to come in, because this is coming up in Connecticut, particularly around children, right?
I have one other question.
The waiting lists are long. Yep.
One other question with a gentleman who's here now, who was in group homes as a child. It sounded like he aged out. He's in his 40s now. He's been homeless many years off and on, but the past half decade or so, his grandmother was paying for an apartment, which she can no longer do. Yep. And so he's ended up back here. And between group homes and also some incarceration periods in his life, he identifies as basically institutionalized and doesn't really know how to survive outside. I'm not sure how where we do with him.
I think that
this is more mental health.
Yeah. Okay. I think that we can help him with mental health, right?
Mhm.
And I think that the process of applying for waivers will give you information that he could apply for SSI. Does he have SSI?
Yes, he does.
He does have SSI. Okay. So
Oh,
he
no,
has
I'm sorry. No, he doesn't. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of someone else.
So the
But,
process
no,
of
he-
applying for waivers, especially with mental health, you're gonna have to document the mental health diagnosis. So that might be the reason that people get the documentation. And what I would do is there's some new SOAR people, and this guy sounds like a perfect person for SOAR,
Mhm.
and SOAR will help with the SSI application. So you
That
want to connect those
THOR?
two things.
Oh,
SOA,
THOR?
what?
Oh, SOAR. Okay.
SOAR,
Mhm.
SSI Outreach and Recovery. So Columbus House has PATH programs, which is the
Right.
Path Out of Homelessness, right?
Mhm.
And they are attaching SOAR providers, so they ought to have some room in their caseload. But I would
Okay.
connect those two things, right?
Mhm.
The SOAR provider probably won't continue with the application, but he sounds like he could apply for the mental health waiver, but you're going to have to document the serious and persistent mental illness, which will
Mhm.
also help for getting him income. So just starting that process would be a huge help. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I'm just not sure where to start, but I can ask him our path staff.
Ask the PATH staff, right?
Mhm. Okay.
The PATH staff can hook you up with all of those things. Is he still, he's homeless, but he's in the warming center?
He arrived with us. I'm not clear right off the bat, and I don't want to look up my notes while we're in the middle of stuff. But yeah, he ended up with us a week or so ago.
Okay. So you know what? Ask the PATH staff to enroll him.
Okay.
Do a referral to PATH. And they can follow up on this, but you're going to need to give them this information because not everybody has it.
Right. Okay. Thank
You
you.
guys, thank you. We got to close it up.
Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Just since you brought up SOAR, what would you recommend for someone that's been denied disability through the SOAR process?
Wow. Well, I think Adele, what you want to do is an honest assessment with SOAR. Sometimes people are denied and they're surprised, but SOAR pretty much knows who's going to hit the eligibility. Ask SOAR what they can do to improve that. SOAR should also be their contact with SSI. So SOAR can look at what's been submitted. So you want to make sure that everything's been submitted, which they
Okay.
do, right? So that's the first thing. But if you think he's really eligible for disability, have that conversation with SOAR, right?
Okay.
And they can appeal it,
Okay, thank you very much.
of course. All right, you guys. It's a pleasure as always. Liz, you want to close it up?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Jennifer. We're really so grateful, and we're grateful for everyone's time and energy with these really tough issues. And we appreciate everybody coming out, and more to come. And like I said, if there's a burning question you didn't get to ask, please shoot me a note and we'll help problem solve it together. So thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Jennifer. And thanks all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, take care.